My name is Jasvinder Sanghera. I'm the author of Shame and Daughters of Shame. I was born in the UK and I went through the British education system, and I've lived most part of my life in Derby. My parents were Sikh. They came here in the 50s from the Punjab of India. I'm one of 7 sisters, and I have to say that I'd watched the majority of my sisters being taken out of school when they were 15 years old to marry men they'd only ever met in photographs. So I knew it was going to happen somewhere along the lines, and I had one sister younger than me, so my turn was coming close when my sister above me, Rubina, was married. I was 14 when I came home from school, normal day at school, and I loved school. And my mother presented this photograph of this man who she said to me, quite jokingly, "This is the man you're going to marry." And she told me then that I was promised to him from the age of 8. And then when I was 15, they took me out of school. And I remember my father locking me in my bedroom and actually having a lock, physical lock on the door, turning the key, and not being allowed to leave until I agreed. So in the end I said yes, because I knew that by saying yes, it would buy me time to plan an escape. And I remember being in the car, and I actually ran away to Newcastle, because on the map it was up north and I thought they'll never find me up there. And I remember being in the footwell of the car all the way, thinking my family are behind me. The police did find me. And thankfully the officer believed me, and this was 28 years ago. He actually said to me he's seen this before, and that I didn't have to go back home, but I would need to ring home to say I was safe and well, and that was the deal. And I wanted my mum to say, "Come back, all is forgiven. You don't have to marry this man, you can finish school." When in actual fact, she said to me that if I didn't come back, then I was dead in her eyes and in the eyes of the family, and that she hoped I'd give birth to a daughter, and I would raise a daughter like a prostitute, because that's what I was, and that's what my mother said to me. And even now, 29 years down the line, when I see my family, because I live in the same city, they crossed the road to avoid me and my children. They still haven't accepted the decision I made when I was 16. As a market trader, somebody came to my stall and said, "You need to ring home because something awful has happened." So I rang, and my mother, who I have to say was the key perpetrator in my life, it wasn't the men in my family, it was always the females that were the abusers. And my mother told me my sister Rubina, who's a year and a half older than me, had committed suicide. Rubina used to tell me when she was alive how she was suffering horrific violence in the marriage, and how she couldn't leave because she would dishonour the family. But in the end, she set herself on fire and suffered 90% burns. She was 24 years old and left behind a little 4-year-old boy. And I remember leaving the market store, ringing my mum, and my mother told me this. And I said to my mother, "I'm coming back to Derby now." And my mother said to me then, and this is 9 years down the line, and she'd lost her daughter in such a horrific way. My mother said to me, "Don't come to the house, you'll make it worse. You can come when it's dark and nobody can see you, and do not come to the funeral." But what angers me about today, 29 years down the line, there are thousands of girls at risk, and this is happening to them. And when this is happening to those girls, many British authorities, police, education, social services, turn a blind eye, thinking this is part of their culture, it's what they do. It's not part of my culture to be abused by anybody. So the authorities have got to recognise and not be part of the problem in thinking there's only 1, 2 or 3 of these cases. There are hundreds at risk. And we're waiting for you to ask us how we are, to intervene, to hold to account our parents, because we're too afraid to do so. I wrote Shame almost on autopilot initially, and it was very difficult to write the book Shame. I have to say, it was quite a cathartic process. I had to walk away from it many times, because what I was doing was unearthing stones I'd firmly put down as a coping mechanism. The survivors now that I've met through Shame have quite bravely taken a platform with me and started to break the silence. It was only ever been me, and it's really empowering for me, I have to say, and for them to be taking a platform. I've never been in a photo shoot with other survivors. It was the most empowering day in my time of doing this work, and certainly for them. And it really gave them a sense of courage and strength, and we refer to that day as a day in history for us all.